The colleagues have assured me their questions are going to be very short and to the point, and I would be grateful if you would confirm that you will give short and direct answers.
I will do my utmost, Sir Bernard.
The committee is obviously extremely concerned about the issue of your senior advisor. This poll suggests large majority of the public believe that your advisor did break the lockdown rules. How much do you think this has undermined the moral authority of the government with the public at a time when public confidence in the government is so important?
I feel that from my advisor, to whom you refer, we've had quite a lot of autobiography recently. I've commented on it. I think people know my views. I really don't propose to add to it.
Prime Minister, you said on the 24th of May that Dominic Cummings had acted responsibly, legally and with integrity. And that reflects that special advisors are bound by the section on integrity in the Civil Service Code. Why have you not invited the Cabinet Secretary to conduct his own independent inquiry in order to give you independent advice?
Quite frankly, I'm not certain right now that an inquiry into that matter is a very good use of official time.
What advice have you sought from the Cabinet Secretary about compliance with the code and that matter of integrity in the code?
I have no reason to believe that there is any dissent from what I said a few days ago.
Has he had an opportunity to ask his own questions of your senior advisor?
Well, I'm not going to go into the discussions that have taken place, but I have no reason to depart from what I've already said.
Of course, it is unprecedented for a special advisor to have their own press conference in the Rose Garden in Downing Street. How did you consult the Cabinet before agreeing to this?
Well, I thought that it would be a very good thing if people could understand what I had understood myself previously, I think on the previous day, about what took place. And there you go.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Prime Minister. And it's good to see you in front of the Liaison Committee, and for the first time ever. Can I just start by saying to you, I actually think that you've been quite brave in the way that you've been prepared to sacrifice the credibility and popularity of your own government just to stand by your man. You've done something I've never seen done in the 20 years I've been in the House. You've somehow managed to unite a nation in condemnation and indignation over your handling of Mr. Cummings. And as the chairman alluded, 80% of the British public now think Dominic Cummings broke the rules. 63% said you should sack him. But the most worrying thing, Prime Minister, is 65% say his conduct makes it less likely that the public will now follow lockdown rules. Surely, Prime Minister, surely no man is more important than keeping this nation safe.
Well, Pete, if I may respectfully say, in addition to what I've already said about that particular matter, a lot of what was written and said over Saturday and Sunday was false in respect of my advisor. It wasn't correct, and I think that he's had an opportunity to clear the matter up, and notwithstanding the various party political points that you may seek to make, I think the best, and your point about the message, I respectfully disagree. I think actually the best way to clarify the message, the best way for people to understand what we need to do next is for us all to move on and focus on what we're doing tomorrow, what we're doing on Tuesday.
Sorry, Prime Minister, have you had a look at your inbox? My inbox, like MPs across the UK, is filled with people listing their sacrifices to follow the instructions that you set. I've had constituents who haven't been able to see their grandchildren and families for months. People not being able to visit dying relatives or attend funerals. You know what this looks like to them? One rule for those at the heart of government and another rule for everyone else. He won't say sorry. Will you say sorry on his behalf?
Well, of course, Pete, I am sorry for the pain, as I say, the anguish and the heartbreak of so many people in this country. And by the way, there are people across government at every level who have been going through exactly the same privations and difficulties. And of course, we all understand that, and I share that. All I'm saying to you is that I think that what we need to do now, as politicians, as leaders, if we possibly can, is to set aside this row, because I'm afraid a lot of the allegations turned out to be totally false, and to move on. I've said what I've had to say about that matter. I think that insofar as it is correct to say that it is a distraction, then by that very argument, now is the time to leave it aside and move on.
Point blank, Richard.
But this is just growing and growing, Prime Minister. The anger is reaching fever pitch. Writing this out just looks like petulant defiance. It's almost like you're now goading the nation. You know that eventually you will have to let them go. Why don't you now just get on with it?
Anything to add, Prime Minister?
Pete, thank you so much for your point. I consider that to be, very, it's a valuable piece of you're making a political point and a piece of political advice. I consider that this government, what this government needs to do is focus on the needs of the nation, on sorting out this problem, and on getting our message across.
My inbox tells me that as a result of the last few days, the response of the British people is going to be far less energetic than it was first time round. And that is as a direct result of the activities of your senior advisor. You're right to say that we know what your views are. Frankly, Prime Minister, I don't think anybody understands why you hold those views. So what do we say to our constituents who are likely to say, you can keep your lockdown if it has to come back? If other people don't abide by it, why on earth should we?
All the more reason now for us to be consistent, clear in our message, driving those key messages, particularly about washing your hands.
Meg Hillier, briefly.
Thank you. Prime Minister, you said that a number of the allegations that are made about Dominic Cummings were false. You were with him for 6 hours. Did you see the evidence to prove that?
Meg, I don't want to
yes
go
or no,
into,
Prime Minister. It's a simple question. Yes or did you see the evidence?
I don't want to go into much more than I've said.
It's a simple question. Did you see the evidence?
If it pleases you, I will say yes, I did, but I don't want to.
Okay, well, that's fine. Prime Minister, you saw the evidence. Would you agree that it would be a good idea for the Cabinet Secretary to see that, or for it to be published, and then this problem might be off your table?
Well, I think actually that it would not be doing my job if I were now to shuffle this problem into the hands of officials who, believe me, Meg, are, as I think the public would want, working flat out to deal with coronavirus. I think everybody's had I know that there's a great political interest in this. I'm not certain that, and I understand that completely, and I totally understand public indignation. I totally understand that, but I do think that as I understand things, and I've said what I've said about the whole business, I think it would be much better if we could now move on and focus on the next steps.
We must try avoid repeating ourselves. Yvette Cooper.
I don't know how, but I mean, if I can ask the same question, what else can I do?
Thank you, Prime Minister. I have to say it is extremely surprising that you won't provide that evidence to the Cabinet Secretary or have any independent verification of it. But let me ask you about your instructions now to parents who either have COVID or have the symptoms of COVID, who won't know how seriously they're going to get it, and who have no local childcare available. Is the message to those parents now the one from Jenny Harries to stay at home unless there's a risk to life, and if you do get ill, contact the community hubs? Or is it the message from the Transport Secretary and the Communities Secretary to be able to travel to wherever you have a support network? In the words of Robert Jenrick this morning, if you don't have ready access to childcare, then you can do as Dominic Cummings did. Which is it?
Well, I'm not certain, Yvette, that there's as much of a discrepancy between those two bits of advice as you suggest. And I think what Jenny was trying to say was that if you've got exceptional difficulties with childcare, then you should take account of them.
Okay, but we're not talking about exceptional difficulties with childcare. We're talking about the very normal difficulties with childcare. A survey from Mumsnet today found that a quarter of parents said they didn't have access to local childcare when they had COVID and were in exactly the same circumstances as Dominic Cummings. A third of them say they'd be more likely to break the rules now. So if you are trying to tackle local outbreaks and prevent them spreading, you need to be giving clear advice to parents. Yeah. And what is it? Because it is not clear to me from listening to Jenny Harries and to Robert Jenrick what that advice to parents who are in Dominic Cummings' situation.
The clear advice is to stay at home unless you absolutely have to go to work to do your job. If you have exceptional problems with childcare, then that may cause you to vary your arrangements, and that's clear. We're also saying from tomorrow that, and this is an important development, that there is a new test and trace operation which will change people's lives and which will require a great deal of thought and compliance, but which I think will be worth it for the whole nation. And the fundamental advice remains absolutely unchanged, which is wash your hands, observe social distancing, and self-isolate if you have symptoms and get a test.
I'm asking specifically about your advice to parents who have COVID. Advice to parents you are not giving. The reason that you are not giving, the reason you are ducking it, the reason you're trying to.
I'm not ducking. Actually, I've just said that I agree. I don't think that you're actually
travel across the country, even though it may mean them having to go into a hospital somewhere else where they may see further infections. Do you want them to do that? Or do you want them to stay put when they don't have local childcare, like around a quarter of parents?
Yvette, I think you'd have to look at each individual case, and there were particular circumstances that my advisor explained. I think what Jenny Harries was trying to say was that where there are exceptional difficulties, then people needed to take account of them. And other than that, I don't really know what I can add.
No, here's the problem, Prime Minister. The reason you are ducking this is because the reason you're not giving people a straight answer is because you are trying to protect Dominic Cummings. The reason you've sent all of your ministers out to say fudgy things and unclear things is because you are trying not to incriminate Dominic Cummings and you don't want to apologise for him. The problem is that means you are putting your political concerns ahead of clear public health messages to parents who have coronavirus. And the consequence of that is putting your political concerns above the national interest. You are trashing, in the words of public
question.
So can you tell us, you have a choice between protecting Dominic Cummings and putting the national interest first. Which will it be, Prime Minister?
Well, I think my choice is the choice of the British people.
So I'd like to start by asking why it took until April to introduce the 100,000 test target, even though our first confirmed case was in January.
First of all, this was a totally new virus.
What was the reason for the delay, Prime Minister?
Unfortunately, we did not have the capacity. And to be absolutely blunt, we didn't have the enzymes, we didn't have the test kits, we just didn't have the volume. We didn't have a test operation ready to go on the scale that we needed.
Prime Minister, my question was really why we waited from January to April before expanding that capacity. But one of the consequences of that is that we couldn't test everyone who was being discharged from hospitals. Did you get any advice that doing that meant we could risk spreading the virus into care homes?
No, and